people online are making a big fuss about me, saying this is a big and beautiful deal, and that it even affects the stock market. They're saying with this deal, anything is possible. How could it impact the US economy? How could it affect the global economy? How could it influence the stock market? On Friday, the Senate also successfully passed a motion, which is important to note, was not the actual comprehensive bill, but rather a procedural motion to move to the third stage for further, more extensive discussion. They meticulously added some specific conditions to this process for a more detailed and thorough debate. Later, I will certainly find a dedicated chance to clearly explain the significant bill to everyone. Some people are indeed against it, but since the motion has already been decisively passed, what else is truly needed? What significant difficulties are there? That's all for now. Late at night in the US Senate, on Saturday there were still 5 votes left, and late Saturday night, my recording also got passed with 51 votes in favor and 49 against, which had an impact on my stocks today. The big and beautiful deal passed a procedural vote by a narrow margin, so it can go through even in the dark, and it could have been approved much earlier. They proceeded to debate and amended the motion to proceed to the consideration of NIGO. Vice President Vance was present in case a tiebreaker was needed, but in the end, it wasn't necessary. What if it had been 50-50? They could have called for a vote. Right now, it's 51-49, just one vote more. The earliest the full Senate could vote and pass it is on the 30th. What is this bill about? Even if it passes in the Senate, it still has to go to the House of Representatives for another vote, because the Senate version and the House version of the bill aren't necessarily the same. But I was told that the Republicans, who are pushing for it to possibly pass by the 30th, spent more than 3 hours on the 28th coordinating and advancing a bill. Among them, there was a moderate from a small state and a conservative from the Conservative Party who were negotiating and making deals, trying to swap things around, but in the end, they had to send it back, thanks to everyone's opposition. For example, former Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee, facing strong opposition from fellow party members in the West, had to withdraw his highly controversial proposal regarding the development, sale, and exchange of public lands, so he ended up thanking those who opposed it. So, did that happen right before the vote? Can we go back to that proposal again? Is that proposal still around, and does it still call for selling off millions of acres of public land to private developers? Yamtak's people say they'll go back and address the concerns of those who oppose it because of the housing shortage, but this would put environmental conservation at risk. If all that public land is sold off to private hands, then it's gone. They can use it however they want. The public would lose certain usage rights. Land that people used to go hiking or picnicking on would no longer be accessible to us. With fewer people protesting, the banners are reduced, but in the end, it's like fighting a losing battle, like a snake biting a mongoose. It's tough. How much can you really accomplish by just making a few calls or doing a few things? In the end, there were still 2 Republicans who opposed it. The final vote was swayed by the Democrats' opposition and 2 Republican senators, Tom Tillis from North Carolina and Rand Paul. Like I mentioned before, Rand Paul takes after his father. He's a libertarian. He said he's absolutely against raising the debt ceiling sky high, calling it a dog and pony show. As for Tom Tillis, he's under tremendous pressure and has announced he won't seek re-election. He'd rather not run for re-election just to oppose this, because Donald Trump would definitely come after him. Tillis opposed it, saying, "You shouldn't cut federal Medicaid programs for low-income people, because that would have a huge impact on North Carolina." In a bit, we'll see just how harshly he deals with those who are poor. Rand Paul opposed it simply because raising the U.S. debt ceiling by another $5 trillion, another $5 trillion, is just crossing the line. That's what it is. The House's plan was to raise it by $4 trillion, but this one raises it by $5 trillion. All right, the Democrats opposed the Big America Act. Take a look. The main reason is that the bill cuts social welfare and gives tax breaks to high-income families. I'll explain that in detail in a bit. Donald Trump explicitly said to those particular Republicans who genuinely want to significantly cut the federal budget, "Actually, I'm truly one of you guys. We absolutely need to get re-elected, and if we drastically cut the budget too much right now, we most certainly won't get elected." That's basically what he profoundly meant. So, we're not going to cut the budget that much, just leave a small gap, just a little bit. Sorry, but we'll make up for it, and we'll make up for it tenfold, using economic growth to fill that small gap. And then the good news is, Tom Thules will not be seeking re-election anymore. When it came time to vote, Donald Trump was still at the campaign headquarters late at night, casting his vote and fiercely criticizing his opponents. Thules said, "I'm not running for re-election." He said, "You can't cut that much from the budget. If you keep cutting that much, you won't get elected." What he meant was, if you cut that much, you just won't get elected. All right, Elon Musk finally couldn't hold back anymore. I always say he's like an eggplant. He just couldn't hold it in. The latest Senate version will destroy the jobs of millions of Americans and cause major strategic harm to our country. It's completely crazy and destructive. And then it hands out money to outdated industries from the past, while seriously damaging the industries of the future. That's what's happening. The new Senate draft legislation is specifically about taxing all wind and solar power generation projects if they haven't been fully completed and operational by the year 2027, which, from a practical standpoint, is basically impossible to realistically achieve. Break time equals 0.5s /. BBB, our credit rating, will drop once this plan passes. BBB will let it happen. This is what Elon Musk reposted. All right, when asked whether Donald Trump has communicated with Elon Musk, he said, "I think he's a very good person, a great person. I haven't talked to him much, but I think Elon is a great guy. I know he'll definitely be very successful, he's very smart, and he used to do events with me, but now he's a bit unhappy." That's not appropriate. Why is he unhappy? You see, being forced to buy electric cars, those mandates for electric vehicles, that's a real headache for him. But I don't think everyone should have to buy electric cars. What I want to tell everyone here is that what Elon Musk opposes is taking away subsidies for electric cars, wind power, and solar power, while keeping tax breaks for natural gas, coal, and oil. He thinks that's unfair. All right, actually, the general public in the US is strongly opposed to this. There's a lot of backlash. This is a big deal. Overall, only about 3 to 5% are in favor, while 64% are against it. Among Democrats, 13% support it and 85% oppose it. For independents, 27% are in favor and 71% are against. Among Republicans, 61% support it and 36% oppose it. So, the mainstream is 64% against, while among MAGA supporters, 72% are in favor. For the Republican supporters, those who support are more than those who oppose, but it's just eating, that's all. Even the non-MAGA supporters are mostly against it, just a few support. If you look at these percentages, it's almost entirely the MAGA faction that supports it. All right, Atlantic, CNBC, NYT, and VIX are all talking about the biggest wealth reversal transfer in history. What does reversal transfer mean? Robin Hood bill, reverse Robin Hood bill, taking from the poor to give to the rich. This is the extremely poor and the extremely rich, and this is still a transfer. Cut this money, and then it's more than $110 billion. Some wealthy people are getting an extra $500,000, and to make those cuts, you have to change the programs that millions of families use, like Medicaid. That's what they're targeting. According to Yale and the University of Pennsylvania, cuts to healthcare will result in an additional 51,000 deaths per year, and it's estimated that canceling subsidies could lead to a loss of 830,000 jobs. Let's look at this. It requires able-bodied people aged 60 or under to work at least 60 to 80 hours a month before they can apply for Medicaid, the health insurance for the poor. Because this is really tough for me, I have to work at least 80 hours a month. What about those who don't have a job? So, can you do volunteer work instead? You have to do 80 hours of volunteer work before you can get this Medicaid for the poor. For those under 14 who have parents or are disabled, they can be exempted from the state's Medicaid funding cuts. The funds will be tied to the income tax of low-income applicants, and starting from 2028, it will gradually increase to 3.5%. This Medicaid funding will still be linked back to the income tax of low-income applicants. These people have to pay taxes first before they can receive the federal tax exemption. For the 2028 consumption portion, this is essentially buying votes. The tax exemption amount is $25,000, and for overtime work, $12,500. These consumption and overtime work amounts are tax exempt. The child tax exemption will be raised to $2,200, and the government will increase the national debt ceiling from $36.2 trillion by $5 trillion, making it $41.2 trillion. In this situation where people are questioning whether the government might go bankrupt, the Senate is also recommending that state and local governments raise the joint income threshold to $500,000 or below, which is already quite high. For married couples in the U.S., the tax deduction cap is $40,000, which is a significant tax cut, lasting until 2028. All right, I think this is just outrageous. This is about the Food Bank Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. You have to work in order to get food bank assistance. Able-bodied adult recipients have to keep working until the age of 64, and state governments are not allowed to grant exemptions. In other words, you have to work before you can get food. Where is this happening? So these are the few people who are against it. What exactly are they opposing? Rain or not, when Congress spends money on these things, it's like a misbehaving teenager. You give him $100 every week, and he wastes it all on gambling and booze. Would you give him $200 instead? He says Congress is still wasting money, but this guy called Ron Johnson, I can't accept treating a deficit of over $2 trillion as the norm. It's because of him that we added $5 trillion more. Sure, he cut some welfare, but he poured hundreds of billions more into the defense budget and hundreds of billions more into border security to deal with illegal immigration. We're mortgaging our children's future for this. It's wrong and it's immoral. This Mike Lee, is trapped by the burden of debt, and under this never-ending enslavement, even unborn Americans can't escape. With the debt continuing to rise, the result is that the interest the U.S. pays on its debt has already reached $1 trillion. All right, so this is hairy. These are a bit more biased. This one's a bit to the left, not so much to the right anymore. The tax cut bill will be wiped out. The tax cut bill, 8 million people lost their health insurance, which goes against what Donald Trump said during his campaign, that he wouldn't touch the social safety net. Cutting health care for the poor is basically political suicide. I really think so. There's no need to run for office anymore with this kind of nonsense. The senator from Maine and New York said, if the bill significantly cuts medical subsidies and endangers health care for low-income families, disabled children, or other vulnerable groups, as well as rural hospitals, I will not support it. That's a good thing. The answer to the bill, first of all, is actually about Donald Trump's political achievements. After the tax cuts, especially on things like tips and other so-called fake taxes, the House version of the bill allocates $70 billion to border security and $150 billion to the defense budget. The U.S. national debt will increase by $2.4 trillion per year, and the 2017 administration's tax cut plan will be made permanent. The ones who benefit are large corporations and high-income families. The corporate tax rate was reduced to 21%, and here, they cut Medicare to raise other costs and rewrote the U.S. immigration system. The result was 215 votes in favor and 214 against, just a one-vote difference. So, what about now? It's basically impossible to get this passed before America's Independence Day, right? Let me explain to everyone what's going on in the House and Senate. So, about the House and Senate. Honestly, I have to say, I haven't really heard much. What's up with Brother AO? Go back, because there are 5 people from CNOOC who are dissatisfied with that crucial vote, so they immediately want to pull out. Besides this, there's the easily understood Medicare AI regulatory land ordinance. They definitely need to control the legislative process. This part, I can explain clearly. In the Senate, they can still filibuster. If you want to make progress, you need at least 60 votes. Can you even get 60 votes? There's no way you can pass it. Unless you change it to a budget bill, or what's called a budget reconciliation bill, then you can pass it with a simple majority. You can only do this twice a year. But for this issue, you still can't use a simple majority. If you lose 3 more votes on this big and beautiful deal, there's no way to pass it. Even losing 2 votes means you can't pass it. First, does it go through a vote in the House or the Senate? Then look at the Freedom Caucus, which might oppose the Senate's budget plan. They're against spending months of expenditures and giving money away. The moderates also have reservations about Medicare, Medicaid, and limiting state and local tax deductions. The Speaker of the House has to navigate between 2 sides. If the Senate version is changed and needs to be reconciled and voted on again, and if the changes are significant, it will be very hard for the House to pass it again, whether by relying on the progressives or by pressure. If it becomes an even more conservative version, then what? Will it still work with the Democrats? What does a Senate filibuster block? What is a filibuster? What about a filibuster? It means you can keep talking, or keep proposing motions, or refuse to let it go to a vote, so you can basically put it on hold. If 41 people disagree with bringing it to a vote, then you have no way to actually hold the vote. A filibuster uses speeches or procedural tactics to delay or block a bill. To end a filibuster, you have to move to end debate, and to agree to cloture you need 60 votes in support. As long as there are 41 votes against, you can't push the legislation forward. So if the Republicans want to force through the big and beautiful deal, they can just gather 41 votes to oppose ending the debate. This kind of technical filibuster doesn't even require long speeches, just procedural opposition is enough. We've all played the game of unlimited amendments, submitting tens of thousands of them, and for each one, calling for a roll call vote to drag out the process. We couldn't really pull that off in Hong Kong. Also, you can't filibuster budget reconciliation. So what if the Republicans designate the bill as budget reconciliation? Then it can pass with a simple majority, and the Democrats can't filibuster it, because reconciliation isn't subject to filibuster restrictions. But not everything qualifies. This process can only be used for budget-related matters, like taxes, spending, and deficits. That's what's called the Byrd Rule. A senator named Byrd set the rules for what counts as budgetary and what doesn't. So now, things like taxes, spending, and deficits are considered budget matters. But if you're dealing with immigration, foreign affairs, environmental issues, or education, those aren't considered budget items, so you can't use reconciliation for them. Budget reconciliation is a special procedure that senators use to quickly pass measures directly related to the federal budget, because without it, the government can't function. So, it can pass with just a simple majority vote. But it can't be used for policy matters that aren't directly tied to the budget. Each year, it can only be used once for each of up to 3 categories, so at most, 3 times a year, 1 for each category. Alright, so there are 3 main conditions for using budget reconciliation. It must have an impact on the federal budget, such as raising taxes, cutting taxes, increasing subsidies, defense or social welfare spending, or reducing the deficit. It can't include things like immigration law, healthcare, abortion, foreign affairs, or education. Even if these provisions affect the budget, if the impact is only incidental, the Senate parliamentarian can rule to have them removed. Just because something affects the budget doesn't mean it can automatically use reconciliation. This process is limited to once per year, and only for spending, taxes, or debt limits. Each can only be used once. Alright, so can it be used or not? What exactly can be done through budget reconciliation? If it includes things like agricultural subsidies, tax cuts, or defense spending, then that's allowed. But if it involves immigration policy, foreign agreements, climate and environmental measures, or education and social reforms that violate the Byrd Rule, then those can't be included in budget reconciliation. So, the bill will be split into 2 parts. If they want to speed things up, they can push the budget part forward, but it won't have any of the other provisions. None of the things Donald Trump wants, like restricting the courts, dealing with illegal immigration, or abortion issues. Those won't pass.